Yes, first I'd just like to introduce the SWAN chair, Stephen Price. Oh dear, did I just do that? Let's see, okay, I'm sorry. I'd like to introduce the Southwest Agroforestry Action Network Chairman, Stephen Price. And he's the Extension Assistant Professor with Agriculture, Natural Resources, and 4-H out of Utah State University with Carbon County. And Steve, would you like to just give a few words about the mission of SWAN to the group?
Yeah, so happy to be here. I'm actually joining from a hotel in Blanding, Utah. We've been touring some sustainable food sourcing projects on the Navajo Nation. So I'm coming from the road, so hopefully my audio is is okay. So yeah, I am the chair of SWAN. Long story short, it's really a connective network of folks working through the Four Corner states in order to advance different agroforestry practices. That includes everything from folks like me and extension, university personnel, agencies, as well as tribes, nonprofits, and municipalities, general public. It's just a way for us to come together, share resources, and work cooperatively to advance the adoption of agroforestry in the arid Southwest.
Okay, well, that's great. And just to kind of let you know who part of the Southwest Agroforestry Action Network Executive Committee, it's in partnership with the Arizona Community Tree Council. So Beverly Babb is with the Arizona Community Tree Council. Steve Price is the president. Mitch O'Neill is on the executive committee, Donna Davis, Jim Allen, and Andy Mason. And it does represent, it represents Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado. So it's just a way to share agroforestry and perhaps bring visions to your palette in regard to how agroforestry might work in those 4 states. But we also invite people from other states if they'd like to see what agroforestry may look like out here. So I think with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Gus Van Ron, founder and director of Omaha Permaculture, and Graham Herbst, who's the vice president and also part of the Nebraska Forestry Division. So they'll be our first presenters. And I think what I'll have to do is I'll stop share. Let me bring up Gus's PowerPoint presentation. Gus, are you out there? Do you want to see if I can?
Yes, I am here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, all right. Well, thank you all for attending this really great series, and I appreciate and I'm honored by the invitation. I think we have some great things going on here in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm here with my vice president and close colleague, Graham Herbst. Graham, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, hi everybody. Good to be here today.
But we have a presentation prepared for you that really highlights the type of work that we're doing and the goals that we're shooting for. And then at the same time, the model that we're making at the same time. We're trying to follow a formula that eventually leads us towards better sustainable landscapes here in our community. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll start with the first slide.
Hey, what I'm trying to do is I'm not able to, let me see if I can reduce this a little bit and get to.
Oh, okay.
Donna,
I'd like to be able to show the slides, and for some reason it's not, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah. And Donna, somehow your screen is putting black marks around that. Would you rather that I go ahead and show the slideshow?
Yeah, that would be super, because what I'm having is it keeps popping down for the mute stop video type stuff. So I'll stop sharing and let you bring yours up.
Okay,
Yeah, those are the toolbars that you have up that aren't showing for the rest of us, but are on your screen.
And I apologize for that. I was trying to
No
stop
worries.
Yeah.
moving my,
No
there we
worries.
go. Here we go. Thank you.
okay. All right, so just give me the next slide, Q, and I will go ahead and advance the slides.
Sounds good. Let's start with the first one or the second one.
Okay.
All right. So this is a little priming kind of description of what permaculture means. It seems like I have a very intelligent audience in front of me. So I guess I'm just differentiating from a lot of other terms out there, which I would include sustainability in general, agroecology, regenerative agriculture, urban agroecology. I mean, really, there are quite a few labels out there, and how I feel permaculture is different is that there are ethics that we follow, and it's kind of like an ideology, and it basically is more of a way to build your community. Whereas I would compare those other words to, maybe less on sustainability. We lean on sustainability a lot more because I feel like it creates a solid core of really just trying to be efficient in your life and sustainable living. And it's not necessarily a marketplace solution or something that is going to be used in improving your market approach and so forth, although these practices do make every system more efficient. And so ultimately it will get you there. So permaculture, the first thing to do is take care of the earth. And then we take care of our inner circle of people, our friends and family. And then when all of those needs are met, we are invited to share excess in our life. It could be time, money, energy, supplies, material, tools. Find those people in your community that need help and bring them across, a finish line towards more sustainable lifestyle for getting their house, heated well with lower costs, heating costs, air conditioning costs, and then at the same time, making sure they have healthy food that that's dignified food. It's not just a surplus food or kind of processed food. So basically, permaculture is a way to enhance your community and make everybody feel like they're part of a team that is getting fresh produce and clean energy in your community. Next slide, please. And ultimately, what we're trying to do with permaculture and our organization is we foster community through sustainable land stewardship. And this slide is really what began our organization. All those little black dots there are vacant properties in North Omaha. And North Omaha used to be is the oldest part of Omaha, Nebraska. Some of these homes are, 1880s, 1890s at the very oldest, but, generally the teens and the 20s. But there are a lot of vacant properties here. A lot of the homes have been pulled down. But ultimately, this is a lower income part of our town. And if these vacant properties do not have good lighting or at least a neighborhood presence, then these properties usually fall victim to some kind of neglect or dumping or, just some kind of, undignified presence. And I guess in 2013, I was part of a Metro Omaha Food Policy Council that saw this map. And I myself, my wife and I live in a small commercial building, and then we have a very like an 1/8 acre property in our backyard. And I guess I was looking for more ways to be able to garden with more land. And so I approached the city planning department through this Metro Omaha Food Policy Council, and we began creating something called a garden lease agreement. And that is really what opened the door towards our organization and being able to imagine our presence, although seasonally, not permanently, on residential properties in low-income communities. And really all our presence meant was that we have a nice sign that has our phone number on it, and that we keep it looking clean. Other than that, we just kind of have to fold up for winter, and then we can reopen the garden in spring. So it seemed like and this was all for free. There's no cost associated with this. So next slide, please. And growing food in your community, in your neighborhood, is nothing new. Here's a picture, I believe it's in Delaware, 1917. And you can see it's a very dense urban environment, but you're growing your food right across from your house that isn't necessarily your backyard. And this is the way it was done until, fast food came around, and we grew our food in our communities. And the road, obviously changed things. The automobile, being able to distribute and grow outside the outskirts of town, but being able to use vacant land that's the way it used to be done, and it still makes sense in our world. I think people want to live near green spaces, manicured, well-maintained green spaces, and have those around us. I think that is a desire. If people know it, and see it, they're usually not offended by the sight of this. And people understand and could understand healthy food in their own community, and its seasonality, which is all important, the whole cycle. You educate your whole community by just simply having a garden in your community. Next slide, please. And in Omaha, we have a rich history of raising our own protein right here in the city, packing it up and sending it all over the world. So we not only grew gardens here, but we have a rich history from agriculture from this whole state. And people used to farmers and ranchers would drive their cattle all the way eastward and bring it over here to Omaha. And those people are still around here. They remember doing that with their dads. And that's a part of our legacy. The stockyards are still down there, but they're pretty much closed up. You have no idea what's going on there because they don't really hold the animals there anymore. It's really only the processing. And so unfortunately they have a very odoriferous presence in our community. And it's people understand that we produce beef here in Omaha, Nebraska. So this is one way that Omaha is an edible city. We do produce food, but it is definitely different than it used to be. Next slide, please. So Omaha Permaculture uses vacant land and tries to come up with a really good way to talk about sustainable land stewardship, but marry it with food production and gardening. And in some respects, and if the garden is big enough, we're bringing farm tools and tractors out on these properties. You can almost call it farming. But we do many things to kind of advocate for this type of work here in Omaha. We are a consultant, a permaculture consultant to many groups in designing edible community green spaces. And this allows us to get the word out and change little routines in your life, and how do you maintain your backyard, and what kind of products do you consume that minimize your footprint. Because Omaha is a spread out city, you practically have to lean on the car at all times. Our bus system is not very good. So understanding how do you design your healthy living in our city is definitely a conversation. And it's good to help groups consult and understand these dynamics all as a whole part of your daily life. We also collect organic waste from restaurants and churches, mostly for bulk collection. And they help us build composts at our headquarters site. And we then are not only pulling that rotting waste out of the out of the garbages, but we're passively feeding chickens with them, some of the food spoils that still look good, and then the rest goes to compost, and we do passive stalls at our properties. We also work with community groups to enhance neglected vacant land with agriculture and ecological soil building techniques. And we are hiring new Americans as well as people coming out of our penal system, people that are on probation, but we are working with all types of people to show, a fun way of looking at the world, and it's not all work, because we do everything in a tour or presentation style. Yes, there are chores that need to be done. It is kind of a farm, but we are training people of all walks of life to be around sustainability. And then we also have paying clients, whether it's business districts, and in the city of Omaha, our land bank and Habitat for Humanity, they're partners where we really just help them maintain their properties and reduce mowing in these communities, because they're mowing them quite a bit in our area. We have the grass grows very often, even in summer, as long as we have a little bit of rain. OP is a community defender of diminishing urban green spaces. And so I don't try to dabble too much in advocacy in the political world, but urban development is pushing through. Even all the blank spaces that you'd think no one would ever build something there, people are raising these old houses and buildings down and imagining a whole new development on blocks at a time. And this is almost becoming more prevalent lately. So I feel like our role as a defender of these green spaces is important. When you back out on a Google Earth view of our city, those little groups of trees are becoming less and less. So, not just the parks, but, even in the communities, I think those are still important. Next slide, please. Basically, and you can click the button one more time, please. But this is how we clean up some of the worst of properties. They usually have a lot of trash everywhere. Click it one more time, please. And then we try to make it look clean and dignified. So this is really what we're trying to do in a very simple sort of way. Next slide, please. And then we don't really like to lean on the city contractors for mowing some of these vacant lots, because they don't really get off their mower very often to pick things up. So the lower income part of town, even though it's mowed, it looks like it's just strewn trash. Next slide, please. And so this is one of our best examples. It's a 2.5 acre New American garden that presents really neat ways of growing things that are from mostly Burmese immigrants. And they're right across from a very prominent kind of rougher part of town back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So we've definitely, what we think, reduced crime in this part of the community. Next slide, please. And this is not necessarily our angle. We try to work with the soil itself. Actually, this is style 10. But I'm going to let Graham take over from here, or at least jump in for a bit here. But take it away.
Yeah, there are a number of community garden efforts throughout the Omaha area. And so it's important that we, as an organization, don't get too redundant with offering similar projects or ways for people to connect when there is already a robust network of community gardens throughout the city. So we focus on food not so much as in terms of yields and how much food can we grow and distribute, but how do we use food as a vehicle for the outreach? So it's much more, as Gus mentioned, of a demonstrational scale where we can introduce people to concepts or new ways of looking at growing food other than traditional raised bed models. Next slide, please. In Omaha, most of the community does not have any ordinances against front yard gardening. And so there are a number of efforts out there to promote converting turf spaces to edible foodscapes that you may be aware of already. And so we like to promote that as a viable practice that doesn't get pushback from neighborhood associations in most cases. There are a handful of smaller gated communities or neighborhood covenants that restrict this sort of activity, but it's fairly minimal. So we like to capitalize on that fact. Next slide, please. Grow Food Not Lawns, of course, is one of those social media campaigns. So this is more the approach that we try to implement, where we're using the topography of the land, the existing materials that are there, the shade, sun, water availability. Those are all components in what we do, rather than being heavy-handed with altering the land to suit the purposes of the neighborhood champions. We try to integrate those desires from the people across the street, next door, with what is already in place in order to combine those two things into something that's going to be successful without requiring excessive amounts of expenditure, work. You know, gardening is always work. That we don't need to overshadow that or make it seem like it's not the case, but there are ways that we can minimize those inputs. And so we still plant in rows a lot of times, but in other cases, we're doing lots of mixed plantings as well. I saw something in the chat about Warren Buffett's son, Howard, and we do definitely have a robust donor infrastructure here in town and a number of foundations and nonprofits that are supportive of these kind of efforts. So we're very fortunate in that way. Thank you for making that comment. Next slide, please. And one more click. As you guys know, biodiversity is an important part of all this, not only encouraging wildlife to take advantage of the areas that we're in, but also enlisting their help. And so pollinators, of course, are assisting with abundance, and we're also giving back with the habitat value that we provide. Next slide. Another example of birdhouses, bats, these are all an integral part of what we do and what we're trying to accomplish. Next slide. We were surprised to find prairie skinks in some of the lots that we work on. Next slide. Turkey, deer, these are all things that most people are surprised to find in a city of over 800,000 people. But the stream corridors, creeks, vacant properties, these are the places that wildlife want to be. And so we do our best to coexist with them as we can. Next slide. So this is a time lapse of the Bioblitz effort. One of the things that we do is to enlist ecologists, botanists, ornithologists, people that know a lot about a particular branch of the life web, and we document all the insects, all the birds, all the plants that we find on these properties to sort of tell the story of how that biodiversity changes over time. And so we can see examples of some of those experts that we bring on board, and then invite the public to come and share in the activity, ask questions along the way, and learn a little bit about the plants, animals, insects that are on these properties that can be interacted with and appreciated. Yeah, we do a seasonal Bioblitz every year. We're on year 6, I believe. Gus can give me a thumbs up or down on the Bioblitzes. It's year 6. So that's starting to become some wonderful data that we can use to tell that story. Next slide, please. Of course, trees come and go, as you guys know, and there's lots of value to capture in those trees as they come out of our communities. And so with another click, please. And one more. We do sawmilling events and invite the public to also not necessarily participate in that. There's some safety concerns, but at least observe and learn about what we're doing along the way to capturing value from these trees that have a lot to offer other than wood chips or carbon being emitted back into the atmosphere from burning piles of wood. Next slide. Cover crops, of course, are another component that we think of this more in an agricultural context, but they do play a role in vacant property where we have substantial amounts of land to cover and minimize weed competition. And so with a couple clicks here, we'll see examples of some of those cover crops that we use to fill space and take advantage of all the room that we have and minimize our inputs. All right, one more click. And now that this is a story of one of our community champions that Gus is going to continue with.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, that was perfect. All right. So with this slide, meet Tiffany. She is definitely one of the best examples of what we like to call a community champion. Either it's a person, a church, a neighborhood association, some kind of group in a community that has a vacant property in their midst and would just love the knowledge, the know-how, the logistical support of making that happen. And in this picture, you can see the garden sign. We make quite a few garden signs with the milled wood that you saw in a slide or two earlier. On the left side of this picture, you see a picnic table. You don't see the length of it, but it's a 12-foot picnic table. This is to avoid having to put footings on these properties, and that being a 12-foot picnic table, it's very difficult to load that up in your truck and walk away with it, or drive away with it. And then in the background, you can see a pallet tool shed. So we get different sized pallets, and then we buy all the materials for making a roof on it and put a padlock on it and some hangers, tool hangers. It's usually big enough to hold a lawnmower, a lawnmower, a wheelbarrow, and a bunch of hand tools all along the edge. So it's usually just enough so that you don't have to be bringing things in your car and truck every time you come, or you walk it down the street, or so there's always tools on site. So there's three main products that we produce to support our community gardens. And so this is actually unique in the permaculture world and permaculture organizations. I think especially coming out of a Nebraska permaculture organization, we're seeing wood as a wasted resource, and we're able to capture that value and turn it into something. Even while the world of wood is going up in price, we actually have been finding ways to keep things with our costs low. Next slide, please. And then we work with garden groups, mostly volunteer groups that want to come in once or twice a week. We work with ILC, Integrated Life Choices. They're disabled people, but they come in and help pick up trash and do some pruning, and then weeding. And then we work with a lot of other groups that come in that want to get out of the office someday and put a picnic table together, have a voila moment. So it's really nice to work with all groups in the community and get to know who everybody is, and vice versa. They like to see what we're doing. Next slide, please. And then we work with the new Americans. We have a lot of refugees that are showing up here in Omaha, Nebraska. They're calling us here their home, and we're welcoming them. And they want to be able to grow food like they did at their home. Unfortunately, most of these people are working in poultry plants in our community. So they are very excited to get out after work and then go into these gardens and be able to walk through the aisles, and literally they're eating as they walk through. They love the experience. Next slide, please. And we're on the cusp of being able to own potentially our own headquarters that can keep all of our tools or tractors and machines and mowers, and then provide wintertime programming space. So what you see on the background is an old railroad depot building along what used to be the railroad. And then this building in the foreground held lumber and let it dry over the winter, cut lumber, and then it would be loaded on trucks and driven off of this property. We actually are going to be probably turning this building full circle, and we're also going to be drying and storing wood in this building as well if we own and acquire it. We've just begun a capital campaign to put a purse together so that we can purchase this property and then do some kind of rehabilitation build outs. We need to fix some roofs. So this is a big event for us. And you can imagine we have many projects that we'd be able to do on this project on this property if we get it, that we can't do on all these little vacant properties. There's gonna be a community bike trail. We're gonna have permaculture training and demonstration all year round. There'll be a bird sanctuary, wood milling, and obviously there'll be the community kitchen and the classroom component. Next slide, please. And I like to end with this slide because people don't think that they can grow food. Well, this is an example of a photo we took 5-6 years ago while our organization was young, and we had high ambition and planted one of our properties with tons of plants. And we pretty much neglected it for the rest of the year, not by design, but we didn't mow it. We just forgot about it. We had a few other properties that we were working on. Well, we showed up in October and then pulled away all those weeds and everything. And this was all the food that was there underneath all those weeds and neglect. And even if you're passive about growing food, there are ways to make it happen. Obviously, we failed in the ability to make that property look nice that year, but at least in production, please don't be scared of trying it out and failing, because I think something's going to work out for you as long as you try. And this is maybe not the audience that I intend this slide for every single time, but this is something that I feel empowers people. Next slide, please. And I think through building community gardens, we created like this little victory garden poster before, and I think we're going to be able to grow a better future together through vacant land stewardship and vacant land management towards community gardens. Next slide, please. And our mission is to foster community through sustainable land stewardship. We really try to return the vacant properties into something better, and each year we want to enhance the soil. So it's a conservation and an agricultural drive to enhance these properties over time so that hopefully we don't have to work as hard to produce food on these properties. And I think unless Graham has anything to say, that's the end of our presentation.
Well, it looks like we have one question in the chat box. Maybe we can field that one and then move into the next presenter. But as a reminder, we do have a Q&A after both presentations. So if you have questions that come up, you can ask them later also. Let's see now, it was, can you share instructions and plans for the pallet tool shed?
For the pallet tool shed, there's nothing real formal. I really work with whatever pallets you can usually find. I like to find those really big ones for the sides. And then you just find some, maybe standard ones that are equally as high for the end caps and the door. You may have to cut off some things, but I can imagine that no matter what size pallets you have in front of you, you would be able to put something together. And I apologize, I don't have any formal plans, but there are so many different types of pallets out there. It really comes down to how you're able to kind of piece them together, and then make sure that your door slides flush at the end so that you can put your hinges on, and then a padlock maybe in 2 spots to hold it.
The other nice thing about a pallet is people are able to see what's in there and know that it's not necessarily something that they want to get in and take in most cases. I mean, a lawnmower can be something desirable, but pallets are great for that. They're also useful for row crops where you can use the pallet slats to sort of shade in between your rows, keep the weed pressure down a little bit. So a lot of cool uses for pallets. I mean, you can't throw a rock on Pinterest without finding a cool project for pallets, and we use some of those. Gus, there was a question about insecticides. Are we spraying everything?
No, we're not spraying. We avoid everything, and that is kind of a principle and a rule in permaculture. You know, we're really trying. The ecosystem is what we're trying to enhance first, and then food is a spillover from that. And I feel once you do add some kind of toxin in your environment, you know, it still affects and ripples through the ecosystem somehow. But I feel like by not adding anything more than already being in an urban environment, the urban environment, you know, there's drift that comes in our environment from all types of things that it's already for life to exist, you know, without us adding more toxins into it. I think is you know, is something we want to protect and nurture. So I think that's a good point. But
Donna, did you
There
want to
is a-
table the rest for now so we can get to the next one, or?
Yes, and there was just one, and maybe you'll want to carry it on to afterwards, but perhaps a definition for regenerative gardening as relative, and how's it the same and different than permaculture? Regenerative gardening.
so the regenerative part, I'm glad you given me some time to talk about that a little more. So regenerative has been rising up, and they're mostly talking about the soil dynamics, and then obviously and pairing with animals. I think that's the goal. It mostly has a rural context, you know, mostly because of the policies of not being able to have animals on vacant properties. So we're kind of avoiding that topic. But so the regenerative is mostly talking about the harmony. And then, yes, there is a ecosystem, you know, application and version of the regenerative model, but the regenerative model is really trying to get animals back out on the land, you know, but in natural ways, and not bringing foodstuffs, you know, and hay bales to the food, to your livestock, but rather doing more of a free range, you know, version of on land. And it's a land stewardship model. And even prairies, through minimal grazing methods, can enhance a prairie. And you know, here in Nebraska, most of our land used to be in prairies. Now 93% of all of our land in Nebraska is in agriculture, and in some form of not necessarily regenerative agriculture, you know, ranching. We have Ted Turner here that does ranch bison here in Nebraska, and that's about as close as you get to what it used to be, the system we have here. You know, we don't have the dung beetles, you don't have the prairie dogs, you don't have that whole system of how, you know, it replenishes the soil underneath the prairie. Most of that's been severed and broken. You know, I think that anything that's still left here is trying to heal itself again, using different species and different approaches. And I think that we need to mimic nature in that regard. Natural mimicry, you know, is where I guess I follow that approach. And that's maybe goes back to that earlier question about, you know, making sure we don't spray anything, is because we want the ecosystem to thrive.
That's a great answer. And I think we do have another huge question from Jim, and Jim, we'll just kind of hold that one if that's okay until after the second presenter. And I also wanted to say thank you to both of you, Gus and Graham, for being here. And I think Graham has to step out a little earlier, but Gus, we'll still have you for answering questions a little later.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Donna. It's challenging work, but it's really rewarding, and we're starting to get the momentum that confirms that we're on the right track. So we appreciate getting the opportunity to share with you today.
And just to let you know, I recognized some urban foresters on the call too, or on this presentation. So your efforts are being, notes are being taken.
Yeah, you know, from an agroforestry standpoint, just one quick comment. The headquarters that we're looking to purchase has a lot of volunteer Siberian elm on it. And we've actually cut and milled Siberian elm here on properties that we have, and find that there may be some value to managing some portion of that Siberian elm stand as a timber crop. When it's already in place, we can thin it and manage it accordingly for use down the road as a timber crop. So very interested in anybody else's thoughts on a wacky idea like that, using Siberian elm for timber. So with that, thanks again for having us.
Well, thank you. And here we'll introduce Lindsay next. And Lindsay Heathcote is that she's the education director for the Tres Estrellas Organic Farm and Garden at Rancho La Puerta Wellness Resort and Spa in Tecate in Baja California, Mexico. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lindsay and I'll stop sharing.
Okay, hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, yes, it's there.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you so much for having me. And as Donna mentioned, my name is Lindsay Heathcote, and I work as the education director at Tres Estrellas Organic Farm and Garden at Rancho La Puerta. We're associated with Rancho La Puerta, and I'll talk a little bit about the ranch as it pertains to the farm in the presentation. So I wanted to share a little bit about our farm and garden, a little bit of background information about how we got started and what we do here, and then continuing on with the regenerative practices that we heard about in the last presentation, talk a little bit about what we do at Tres Estrellas. And then talk a little bit about a community project that we have here. We have a nonprofit foundation, the Mexican equivalent of a nonprofit, Fundación La Puerta, and that is how we connect with our local community here in Tecate, Baja California. And then I wanted to talk about our Soil to Table certification program, which is a new educational program that we offer here on the farm, and then a little bit about some future educational programming that we also plan to incorporate on the farm in the future. So Tres Estrellas Organic Farm and Garden is a 35-year-old production farm. Just in the past few years, we've really started to incorporate educational opportunities, but for the past 35 years, it's been a production farm. And it's the production farm for Rancho La Puerta, which is a health and wellness spa that was founded in the 40s. So it's been on the same land for 80 years, and it's been in the same family for 80 years. It's actually still in the same family. The woman that started the ranch, her daughter is now the president of Rancho La Puerta. So the farm has a long history going back with the ranch. We produce on 6 acres, so it's pretty small. The whole property of Tres Estrellas is 240 acres, and we're located amongst chaparral landscape, so pretty dry. We do, get some rainfall. We're not as dry as other desert parts of Mexico, but 2 years ago, when it was a really wet year, we had I think we had 24 inches of rainfall, and then just this past wet season we had, I think, 10 or 12 inches. So it does vary depending on the year. And the 6 acres that are in production is a combination of permanent raised beds. So we farm the permanent raised beds biointensively, which I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the term biointensive. It can imply a lot of different things. There are a lot of different things involved in the method, but the part that we focus on is digging the beds very deeply so that we can plant the individual vegetables closer together. So we're taking advantage of the vertical profile of the soil, and not so much the horizontal space, but more the vertical space. So we have a lot of different varieties of vegetables that we plant in those permanent beds. And then we also have perennial fruit and medicinal crops. So I'll talk a little bit about the agroforestry practices that we use later on in the presentation, but we have different rows of perennials spaced throughout the annual beds. So different fruit trees, and then some medicinal trees as well. And then we produce cut flowers. So the flowers play a lot of different roles on the farm. They add to the agrobiodiversity, and obviously helping us call beneficial insects into the farm, but we also use them as cut flowers throughout Rancho La Puerta. You found flowers all throughout the resort, in the rooms and in the dining room, so we get a lot of uses out of the flowers. And then we have egg-laying hens. We have about 40 right now, so not enough eggs to provide all of the eggs that we need for all of the guests. We have about 100 to 150 guests a week, 52 weeks a year at Rancho La Puerta. So, and they're eating eggs every morning for breakfast. So we do not supply all of the eggs that we need, but a good amount goes to the kitchens. And then we also have a few Nigerian dwarf goats. This is a new part of the farm. The farm back 35, 40 years ago, when it was originally bought, did have goats on the ranch, and there were many years that we didn't have goats, and so we just have kind of introduced that species back onto the farm. So that's really exciting. We're growing our herd every year, and they provide fresh milk for us, and as we've also started to do some goat cheese with the milk that they give us. And then on the property as a whole, we do a lot of ecological landscape management. We do apply a lot of permaculture practices on the property. The production area itself isn't so much a permaculture farm, but the property, the 240 acres that we are situated amongst, is managed more like a permaculture property. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those management practices that we use. And our climate is Mediterranean, which means that we can grow year round. It does get cold in December, January, February. We get light frosts, but we can grow a lot of things year round: beets, carrots, radishes, lettuces, fennel. None of it, it's all open ag. We don't do any protected ag. We have a greenhouse for germination, but we don't produce anything in a hoop house or anything. So it's all out in the open fields. And then all of the produce from the farm goes to 3 commercial kitchens that are associated with us. So the kitchen at Rancho La Puerta, which is the wellness resort and spa that I mentioned. And then we have 2 kitchens on the farm property. La Cocina que Canta is an internationally recognized cooking school. So we have guests from Rancho La Puerta. Well, let me back up a little bit. Our Rancho La Puerta is 2 miles down the valley from the farm. So even though we are one and the same and we're owned by the same family, physically we're two separate properties. And La Cocina que Canta, the cooking school, is located on our farm property. So the guests from Rancho La Puerta will come over in the evening and take a cooking class on the farm property in the cooking school, and then head back to the ranch for the night. And so our produce goes to the cooking school. And then we also have a farm-to-table cafe, El Cafecito. And El Cafecito is a farm-to-table cafe that is not meant for Rancho La Puerta guests. It's more for the local community of Tecate. And it's our way of showing the local community the farming practices that we care about, and also the vegetable-based diet that we promote at Rancho La Puerta. It's a way of sharing that with the local community as well. So here is an aerial view of our farm plot. So you can see this photo was taken, I know it was taken a few years ago. I'm not sure in what month, but it was definitely during the dry season. So you can see we're in a pretty arid environment. And then I like this visual because you can see the vegetable beds, the permanent raised beds with the rows of perennials throughout the farm. And then up towards the bottom of the photo is where all of the infrastructure is located. So the cooking school and the cafecito, and we'll see more pictures of that later on. And then on the right side of the image, you can see our composting area in that kind of like upper right-hand corner. And then actually, since this photo was taken, there's a triangular area. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's kind of a triangular area between the vegetable tree plot and the compost area, and that has become where our goats are now, and we graze them in sort of a silvopasture area to the right of the vegetable plot. So yeah, just a few images. I don't know if you're familiar with Nigerian dwarf goats. They stay fairly small, which we did on purpose. We do a lot of work with kids in the local community of Tecate, so we wanted goats that weren't going to be too big, and they're pretty docile. So it's a good species to work with if you do work with children, or if you have guests, any type of visitors coming in and out of where you keep your animals. And then we have our egg-laying hens. The top right-hand corner, there's a photo of the cooking school, which I think I have another photo in here later on. And yeah, so the middle photo on the bottom is kind of showing you the landscape around the farm. So we're situated at the foothills of Mount Kuchuma, which is a sacred mountain for the local Kumeyaay people who are still in the area. But so we have a nice situation. We're on the outskirts of Tecate, and there's nothing, there's no populated area behind us. We run right up to the foothills of the mountains. So it's really nice. It's a protected area. We don't have a lot of pollution coming from a lot of angles because we have that backdrop of the mountain behind us. And then we have some hiking trails up in that mountain behind us, which are used by the ranch guests and by students that come to our Soil to Table program. So, like I mentioned, for the past 35 years, Tres Estrellas has really been a production farm. There have been some opportunities for Rancho La Puerta guests and other visitors to interact with the farm, but not in a very they're very short interactions where people come for 30 minutes, or they're here for an event. So the educational program that I'll talk about in a few slides is a way to provide a deeper experience for different groups of people that are looking to have more of a hands-on experience and to really learn the ins and outs of ecological farming. So the past 35 years, the hands-on cooking class has been a good way for guests to interact with the farm. Like I mentioned, guests from the ranch come over and they do a cooking class, and they go out into the farm to harvest beforehand, which is a way for people to get their hands into the soil for a minute and see the crops and see how they grow and understand the type of diversity that we have on the farm. But it's a quick interaction, it's 30 minutes on the farm. So it's a little bit superficial as far as, not going too deep into what we actually do on the farm. And then we also offer the guests an opportunity to come over and take a tour of the farm after eating breakfast at the farm. And again, it's a 30-minute interaction. So we try to share our mission on the farm and why we're growing food the way we're growing food, but it's a quick interaction. So not a lot of time to share too many details there. And then we also, our space is available for private events. So things like weddings and company team building activities, different private dinners. So again, it's a time, it's an opportunity to spend time on the farm, but it's not a time to really share our practices in depth. So here's a short video just of kind of how the guests have interacted on the farm until now. It's just a series of images. Let me see, I hope this will play. I think everyone will be able to see this. So yeah, just a few images to kind of give you a better visual of the farm and how guests have interacted with the farm in the past. So I might have to get out of my presentation to get to the next slide. So now I'd like to go a little bit more into the regenerative practices that we use on the farm. We do a lot of composting, we had the advantage that we have, up to 150 guests per week, 52 weeks a year, eating 3 meals a day in the dining room at Rancho La Puerta. So we have, we bring all of those scraps from the kitchen over to Tres Estrellas, and we compost them in windrows, which is the image you see on the left. So that is really what has allowed us to produce so many fruits and vegetables at Tres Estrellas. Like I mentioned, we're in a pretty arid environment. The native soil is extremely sandy. Traditionally, this land was ranch land. There were some grapevines and some olive trees, and there still are in the area, but it's not traditionally a vegetable production area because the soil just doesn't have a lot of organic matter in it. So us being able to compost on such a large scale with so many kitchen scraps has really allowed us to improve our soil over the last 35 years. And then we also do lombric composting or worm composting. So you'll see the 3 bins in the middle photo. And we actually use the worm castings that come out of those bins in the greenhouse. So we use it in our germination mixture where we germinate seedlings in the greenhouse. We don't produce it in large enough quantities to apply it to the beds where we're planting. So it's more efficient to use it in the greenhouse. And then that last top right-hand photo is a picture of our biodynamic compost piles that we produce here. So again, it's not a large enough quantity to apply directly to the beds. We use it in our germination mix in the greenhouse, but it's super rich compost that really gives a large nutrient boost to the seedlings that we produce in the greenhouse. And then as far as sustainable soil health management, we do a lot of cover cropping and green manures. So we're constantly taking blocks of the farm out of production and putting them into cover crops. That bottom corner, you'll see a cover crop of sun hemp. We like sun hemp during the summer. We use tillage radish, buckwheat, different legumes, all sorts of different cover crop mixtures. We use low-till practices, so we're not completely no-till. We do own a tractor, and we do bring the tractor in mostly when we need to incorporate cover crops. If we can turn a bed over without using the tractor, we will. We'll usually just fork the bed by hand and put the new crop in. But when we turn in the cover crops, sometimes it's necessary to get all of that biomass under the soil to use the tractor. We do a lot of crop rotation, which really contributes to our soil health. So because we're growing so many different varieties of vegetables, it's pretty easy to rotate them throughout the farm so that we're not growing the same thing in the same location frequently. And then again, the composting is a huge part of our soil health management on the farm. And then, like I mentioned, we do incorporate agroforestry onto the farm. So we do alley cropping between the rows of perennials. So we have some rows of fruit trees. So we do persimmons, apples, pears, pomegranates, figs, some citrus. And then we have in that top right-hand corner, you'll see a row of olive trees that really at this point just acts as more of a windbreak. 10 or 15 years ago or so, before I was on the farm, we did produce a significant amount of olives, and we made our own olive oil on the farm. But there has been significant issues with the olive fruit fly in this area because of the overproduction of olives. So it's a pest that we haven't been able to manage very well yet. So for now, those olive trees have become a windbreak, but they still obviously have ecological importance on the farm. So they're going to stay there for now. We have a windbreak pretty much around the whole perimeter of the farm. Because of our location, we're kind of in a valley that's pretty exposed to wind, and we have strong Santa Ana winds about this time of year. Those more delicate annual crops can be pretty vulnerable without those windbreaks. So, we kind of have layered windbreaks throughout the different plots on the farm, but then we have, as you can see on the left, kind of a perimeter around the farm that really protects us. And some of those trees have died over the years and will be replanted in the next few years, but we still have a significant amount of protection from them. And then, we try to conserve agrobiodiversity as much as possible on the farm. And we do that through, crop rotations. We do a lot of companion planting. We don't necessarily do a lot of companion planting within the same bed, but we try to do it within the same block. So to really add spatial agrobiodiversity throughout the farm. And then, again, incorporating the goats, we did that for many reasons. We wanted the fresh milk and the ability to make cheese, but also they just add a lot of agrobiodiversity to the farm, and their manure and their grazing potential, adds a lot of microbial diversity to the farm as well. And then, like I was mentioning earlier, we don't necessarily, I wouldn't say that we manage the production plot with permaculture practices, but the property at large is managed with permaculture principles in mind. So some of the big things that we've done here over the past few years, in the left hand, the photo on the left hand side of the screen, you'll see our gray and black water treatment area. So we have a lot of water coming out of the commercial kitchens on the property, and then the residential part of the property as well. So we recycle that water through this system. It's a system of water filtration plants and gravel. And so once that water has been filtrated, it's pumped up to a holding tank, and we don't use it as potable water. We use it to irrigate the rest of the landscape plants. And then in the center photo, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see a swale. So we have done some earthworks around the property, trying to move water where we need it the most. And above this swale, there's a slight tilt to the earth, and so we don't get a lot of rain here. But the rain that we do get will come down, and this swale, the purpose is to stop and sink the water before it runs past this oak grove. So we have a creek that used to be a year-round creek, but now it only runs in the rainy season. And so those oak trees that are growing around that creek can suffer when we have years of drought. So this swale really helps us, sink the little amount of rainwater that we do get right where we need it to keep those trees alive. And then the photo on the right is a photo of a workshop that we did not too long ago, installing a laundry to landscape gray water system. So in that photo, we are piping water directly from the washing machine that's in the residential part of the property down to a little pomegranate tree grove that we have. So we use a significant amount of water in the washing machine. We have 6 full-time residents washing it multiple times a week. So that water, we use biodegradable soap, so that water can go actually directly into the landscape and directly to the trees that we want to irrigate. And then we also have a community garden, which is not on the Tres Estrellas property. It's right up the hill from us in our fundación, in our foundation property. And through this project, we interact with the local community. We have a community garden. We teach them about organic, ecological food production, farm-to-table, healthy cooking. And then we interact with this community group on the farm. Occasionally, they'll come down to the Tres Estrellas farm, and we'll give them workshops on kind of a bigger scale of organic agriculture. And so the program that we just recently started offering is our Soil to Table certification program, and this is a way to really invite people to interact at a deeper level with Tres Estrellas. The farm has had 35 years to perfect our production practices, and so now it's time to really share what we've learned over those years with people that are interested, in gardening at home, or young people that are interested in a career in ecological farming. So the certification program, we're still experimenting with it. We've run 3 programs that were 6 weeks long, and they were super successful. We will experiment with some 4-week programs in the upcoming year to see which one feels better. But the plan is to run 3 or 4 programs a year between 4 and 6 weeks for each program. And it's a pretty small program. The maximum that we accept is 8 students. It's not meant to be a large program. The housing that we have on the farm is really only suitable for about 8 students. So it keeps the experience intimate, and there's a lot of one-on-one learning that happens. So the program focuses on ecological farming, farm-to-table food preparation, and self-reliance. And it's about 5 to 10 hours per week of ecological farming curriculum. So that part is more traditional curriculum. I'm the director for that part of I'm the director of the program, but the actual ecological farming curriculum is the part that I give. So it's a combination of like a traditional classroom lecture or a hands-on workshop. And we touch on topics like, organic soil health management, making and using compost, chickens and goats, germination, greenhouse management, drip irrigation, installing drip irrigation and maintaining that type of system. So it's really the technical skills to be able to farm ecologically on a small scale. And then the students in these groups will spend between 10 and 20 hours per week on the farm doing hands-on farm work with our farm crew. And the program also includes the farm-to-table side of the curriculum. So the group will take 4 to 6 cooking classes with our executive chef from Rancho La Puerta. They're hands-on cooking classes. It's a great way for the group to go out into the farm and learn about what grows on the farm seasonally and how to create recipes using only seasonal produce. And the program also includes field trips. So we go visit different farms and ranches in the northern Baja California area. Most of the places we visit are within 2 hours of the farm, but it's a way for students to see other examples of ecological farming, landscape restoration, different things. We have a few places that we go depending on the group and their interests. And then the students will be asked to create individual projects while they're here. So it's a way for them to kind of dive deeper into something that they're interested in researching, or idea that they're interested in developing while they're here. And then they'll have the opportunity to present that to the group at the end. And then the program also includes 2 Saturdays at Rancho La Puerta. And so those Saturdays will look like a combination of fitness classes, yoga classes, listening to different presenters that are presenting at the ranch, having the opportunity to eat in the dining room, to see the produce that they've been working hard to produce on the farm all week, see how that's used in the dining room at Rancho La Puerta. And the program includes shared housing as well as meals. And right now the program is priced at $375 a week. Again, we're really just starting out, and this is the number that we have decided to use for now, but it may change in the future. So just a few pictures of some of the past groups we've had. Originally the intention of the program was to target gap year students, college students, recent grads, young adults who are looking to go into a career in ecological farming or farm to table food preparation. Our groups have been a lot more mixed than we expected. We've had a whole range of ages and interests, young farmers, backyard gardeners, students that are considering a career in farm to table cooking, students that want to go on and start farmers markets or support their local food systems in different ways. So it's been a lot more diverse than we expected, which has been a pleasant surprise. It's just the way that the program has evolved. So we'll see how that evolves in the future. But they're really involved in everything that we do on the farm. So we have a full-time farm crew that is in charge of the production. So the students that come onto the farm are not replacing our daily labor. It's definitely a dedicated educational program. So the activities that they do are things that we need to do on the farm anyway. We're not creating work for them. However, there's definitely an emphasis on the educational aspect of what they're doing, and it's not just give them a task and leave them on the farm for a few hours to get it done. It's very guided, and we try to really make sure that they're understanding why we're doing what we're doing and all the details about how we manage the farm. And then the farm to table curriculum, I would say that the program has about an 80% focus on farming and a 20% focus on farm to table. So it's definitely more heavily focused on the farming, but the farm to table training is just a really amazing way to bring the produce from the farm into the kitchen. Reina, who is our executive chef, will do classes on preserving the harvest. So we'll do fermenting, drying, pickling, canning, and then we'll do hands-on cooking classes where, like I said, the emphasis is really on seasonal cooking and eating. So we'll go out onto the farm, see what we have, and then create a recipe with what's available to us, and then we'll make a beautiful meal and eat together. The field trips, like I mentioned, we go visit different farms and ranches in the area. One place that I like to take groups is a ranch that has, the owner has planted 44,000 trees in the past 20 years. He's really done a lot to restore an area that was very dry and barren and did not have a lot of life on it. And now it is booming with biodiversity and trees and water. He's restored a creek on that property with different landscape management practices. And then we also go visit another producer who is one of the largest producers of diverse organic vegetables for Valle de Guadalupe, which is an area about an hour south of us that has become kind of a culinary center for this part of Baja California. And then the students will do individual projects. So we had one student give a carpentry workshop, and the group built a dog house for some of the farm dogs that we have on property. One of the students kind of did a redesign of her backyard garden and presented to us her plan for that space when she got home. So it's a way for the students to share hands-on experiences with each other, and gives them time and space to develop ideas that maybe they've been wanting to develop for a while. And I had a video in here. Let me see. Oh yeah, here it is. So this is just a quick little video of some of the reflections from past students.
I really want to plant things, not sure what yet, but I want to start in our student experimental farm, I want to have like my own bed, or like we could share a bed, and plant in it and just watch it grow and use everything that we like here. And then I also down the road want to have an animal sanctuary and have a lot of animals. And yeah, that's what I want to do. And also use the animals in my future.
Two things I want to do for sure when I get home is we learned about keyline swales, which will stop the water from moving. If it's going downhill, you dig this big trench and the water stops, and then a bunch of life grows there, because where water goes, life grows. So I want to do some keyline swales in the garden. And Lindsay also took us to this really cool farm visit where there is 44,000 trees, and this guy completely revived the desert. That was really dope, and I want to plant a bunch of trees.
I don't have an ag background, so everything was very new to me. And so I think now I'm just so grateful for all of the information and can't wait to apply it in my little garden at home, and then hopefully one day on a larger piece of land.
So those were just a few little clips of some of our past students. And then just to finish up, as far as future educational programming, we will soon be participating in Mercadito Cuchuma, which is, it's a little local farmer and artist market. So that will be something that the student groups participate in. They'll harvest the fruits and vegetables from the farm, prepare them, take them to market, sell them. So it'll be the whole farmers market experience. And then in the future, we also plan to offer 7 to 10 day intensives that will be more focused to Rancho La Puerta guests or to an older demographic. Like I said, we really imagine the longer programs being more geared towards younger students, recent college grads, gap year students. So eventually we'd like to kind of separate those two groups out where possible and have the student groups here for 6 weeks, and then the kind of backyard gardener, retired demographic for the 7 to 10 day intensives. And over time, we'd really like the property to become a center for regenerative arts. So we invite visiting teachers to come when we have the student groups. That gray water, the laundry to landscape system that we installed was a visiting gray water teacher. So the owner of the farm, Sarah Brightwood, has a ton of connections from people that she's met through her years working in ecological farming. So we'd really like to take advantage of when we have those people on the property to also invite the local community and the community from San Diego to come down and participate in those workshops. So that's something we'll be developing over the next few years. And then we'll be working on some customized programming for culinary arts students. We have a pretty well-known culinary arts school located here in Tijuana, and there are some smaller programs in San Diego, so we hope to do some customized programming for that demographic. And then we really hope to continue working on our ability to offer the chance for university and college students to gain college credit for the program that we offer here. I know a few of our past students have been able to gain college credit, but we hope that becomes a little bit more formal. And that is what I had for you. So I think I have to stop sharing. There we go.
Well, Lindsay, that was pretty amazing. And we do have one question. There was a question on your water source for the farming. And also, I think you mentioned it, but how much rainfall do you receive annually?
Yeah, so the water that we use in the drip irrigation on the farm is well water. We have 2 wells on the property. One, it has been here for 35 years. And unfortunately, we recently just realized that it is possibly contaminated with the wastewater from our reverse osmosis system. So we might have to discontinue that well, but we have another well on the property. So yeah, the drip irrigation for the farm comes from well water, and then the rest of the irrigation for the landscape plants comes from the recycled gray and black water. And
Very
then
good.
yeah, then the rainfall, it's, you know, I've been here, I'm from the Midwest, originally from Missouri. So, you know, we get 40, 45 inches of rain a year there. I've been here for 3 years and it's been super variable. The first 2 years I was here, I think we had between 20 and 24 inches of rainfall. And then just this past winter, we had, I think, about 10 or 12 inches. So we'll see what happens this year.
Wow. Well, and you know, that might be a good question for Gus too. Gus, as far as rainfall in Omaha and water sourcing for the different projects, I guess it varies.
Yes, that's a good point. Here in Omaha, we're on the eastern and more the wetter side of the state. It's much more dry. I think the variable on the panhandle of Nebraska is 9 or 10 inches. And then here on the eastern side, we get 30 to 35. And in the last 5 years, and most climate change projections are saying that we're going to get much, much wetter in the future. So, and then, I mean, we've already kind of tested our levees around Omaha on a few occasions in the last few years for flooding, where we've been just barely getting by. So flooding is going to be a bigger issue in our future. And you know, I think it was sad to see, even during a few storms this year, that were just downpour bucket events and 5-inch plus at a time. And some of the best gardens in Omaha were wiped out mid-season, and then they were flushed with all of this kind of runoff water that you no longer really can garden in those situations. So, you know, we're going to have to be creative in the future, you know, and anticipating and knowing what's down the, you know, in the future is good to know as well. It means that we're going to be not farming like Lindsay is. We're not farming in the lowlands anymore, but maybe mid-grade, you know, not quite the tops of the hills, because the wind here in Nebraska is pretty prominent. So I would say mid-grade, a south-facing hill, mid-grade, and we have quite a bit of that. So, but those are probably the ideal situations.
Well, and you know, Lindsay, you had talked about, oh, let's go back. We did have the question from Jim. Let's see, and now we're just kind of asking both presenters different questions. And I think Jim had a question. Let's see, 2 questions. How about the challenges you may be facing and how do you deal with them, including soil contaminants like lead and hydrocarbons? And then the number 2 part is theft and vandalism. And I think at that point that was toward Gus also. How are you dealing with soil contaminants like lead and hydrocarbons? And can you talk a little bit about theft and vandalism, perhaps in the urban setting? And perhaps, Lindsay, you may have some comments too.
Yeah, just to kind of finish, I think Graham reinterpreted that as, you know, the insecticides and even kind of industrial fertilizers and anything that we're doing, or herbicides and fungicides, all those things. We generally try to stay away from all of that just for the sake of the ecosystem. And then as far as theft and vandalism, yes, that does happen. We generally, all the equipment we have are kind of old equipment. We're not really getting the nice, shiny new equipment. We have a mechanic that we have on staff full time. So we're always keeping our tractors running and we're enhancing our systems. The vandalism in how we deter that is simply by the design of our kind of outdoor furniture and everything that we're doing. Because if you're building things out of pallets, it's not too shiny and it's not really appealing to most people. And honestly, a lot of the things that we are building and designing, we're not we're not hopefully attracting anybody that thinks there's something valuable on the property. But yes, I'm sad to see other gardens having to deal with people that come through and just chop down their fruit trees. Just for no reason, just walking through, people that drive through vacant properties with four-wheelers. There's all types of vandalism. It can take many shapes. And how we can do it on the prevention side, we actually put these large old railroad timbers that probably have off-gassed most of their creosote. And we put those on the curbs so that if someone's going to drive their truck or anything off the wheel, that they're, at least there's something there preventing them to be able to do that. And I hate to say it, that is one of our biggest problems, is people just looking for an off-road moment in the middle of a garden. And it's sad. And then when you see it the next day, it's heartbreaking. So.
Well, and Lindsay, did you have any thoughts on the soil contaminants or the perhaps the theft vandalism, perhaps?
Yes. So the theft vandalism question is very different for us because we are in Mexico and our property actually runs up to the international border wall. So we have had a lot of theft and vandalism in the past. We have security guards on the property now 24 hours a day, which is just kind of what we've had to, the solution that we've had to come to, because we do have a lot of people that are, trying to cross into the United States that walk through our property. So yeah, we don't have a lot of theft anymore because we have those security guards, but it was an issue before. And as far as soil contaminants and using insecticides, we also do not use insecticides. We are trying to do everything possible to keep the ecosystem in balance. We use a lot of compost tea. We had the advantage that, what I tell students that come to the program is that our model is a little different than other farmers, in the fact that our farm is somewhat institutionalized, if you will. So all of our produce is sold to our sister company, which means that they have a level of tolerance that a lot of farmers I don't think have when they're selling to other markets, like directly to restaurants or directly to the public. Our chefs in the kitchen know that we don't use insecticides, so that if there are holes in the lettuce leaves, that it's because we're managing organically and that it's not because it's a lower quality product. So I think we have a level of tolerance that a lot of other farmers don't. So our vegetables are beautiful and nutritious, and they're not overridden with pests, but we probably do have more holes in our lettuce or indications of pests being present on the farm than conventionally produced products. So yeah, like I said, we don't apply anything, and our soil really has been, we haven't been out of balance. We do regular soil testing. We haven't had issues with contaminants. Right now our issue is we have really high levels of sodium. And so, we are in an arid environment. We have a lot of salts in the soil anyway, but we're thinking that it's so excessively high all of a sudden that it's probably something to do with contamination in our well water.
Those are both varying answers to some common central theme issues, I think. And that's, I guess we're kind of rolling into being the end, but were there any other questions out there that people would like to throw out there? And I did have one, Lindsay, you kind of shared how you sort of outreach a little bit with the communities around your program. And Gus, from the neighborhood perspective, these are not gardens where people just rent a spot, but it's actually a community accessible place. And was that a challenge, I guess, or is that something that the communities have embraced, but it took a little nudging, or how did that roll? And Lindsay, maybe you might want to comment too, because of your outreach into the community.
Mm.
You know, honestly, the people, the tip of our spear is the people gardening, and they are the one that have, they are the people that are with most presence on these properties, and it's being led by our new American refugees that are from Burma, Myanmar, Thailand, and even some African countries, so Rwanda and Kenya. And they have different styles and they have different needs. And also they grew up in a very wet environment. So teaching them the nuances of how to maybe be a little more conservative with water is really been our biggest challenge, because they water a lot. And, you know, we haven't had any kind of drought pressures too bad here in Omaha, but we do have drought years. And our sister city, Lincoln, the capital, did put a moratorium on using water a few years ago. So it's knocking on our door that we'll have the opposite of too wet to have too dry. But anyway, just to be able to teach people the nuances of understanding water usage, and that it is coming out of a pipe, aside from our annual rainfall, which is upwards to 30 to 35, but it's increasingly becoming downpour moments at a time and not just your drizzle, which is all nice. But being out in the community, we're relying on our people who are the community champions to be our community engagement. So the signs do a little bit of that. So we have a phone number posted on those signs, and I will receive calls all days of the week, you know, looking for people to find how to get connected and to get, you know, learn more or get access to the food. Because I don't know if the food lines during the pandemic here in Omaha are still growing. I look at one that we help supply. We don't have a market garden, but all of our excess food goes to homeless food shelters, and we have organic eggs and all the greens and everything. And we have cold frames and greenhouses, and we produce upwards to 40 pounds of food, even in winter, you know, when we got down to -10 last year and we were still producing food, you know, but I see the pressures of just food insecurity as being the main reason why we are accepted so easily, you know, and we have many different people in our staff, very biodiverse staff. We're from all over the world, and we're all trying to reach out in our daily activities.
That's awesome.
Hey, Lindsay, when is your education program schedule going to be posted, and how do you go about accepting registrations?
Yeah, so we will be publishing a 2022 calendar probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And right now I use social media as our main way to get information out, Facebook and Instagram. We're working on developing a landing page that you will be able to access it through the Rancho La Puerta website. So hopefully we'll have that up and running by the end of the year. But the application process is, you know, generally interested individuals will contact me via email, and then I'll send them a link to an online application. It's a pretty quick, straightforward online application with just a few questions about why you're interested in the program and what background knowledge you have, and no prior experience is necessary to participate. And then once I receive the online application, I'll set up a time to talk on FaceTime or Zoom or over the telephone, just to kind of give myself a chance to explain the program a little more and allow the individual to ask me any additional questions. And then we accept on a rolling basis. So as long as we feel like a good fit for the person and the person feels like a good fit for us, we'll accept on a rolling basis until we fill those 8 spots.
Lindsay, I think you did put your you put your email address in the chat, I think.
Oh yeah, it was on my last slide in my presentation, but I can send it to the chat right now.
And then here's the Facebook page. I didn't know if it'd be there.
Yeah, yes, my email. Yes.
Okay, and the classes fill up pretty fast?
Yeah, you know, it's been interesting with COVID. Our first program was at the beginning of last year with COVID, and So not all of our programs have been full. The first 2 were full, and this last summer program was not completely full. We only had 3 people. So we'll run the program with 3 people is kind of our minimum. But you know, we'd like to get to the point where we're reaching that 8 every time. It just creates a larger learning community, and because the participants are living together and working together and cooking together, you know, the more people, the more, you know, the smaller groups are nice because it's more one-on-one, but with 8 people, it really is a one-on-one experience anyway. So it's nice to have that diversity amongst the group. And I didn't mention, we have had, most of our students thus far have come from the United States, mostly because most of the marketing that I have done is in the United States. We have had a few students from Latin America, but the goal in the future is that the program be more diverse, and that we have students, both local students from the Baja California area and the States come, and that it's more of a cultural experience. We've kind of held off on marketing heavily locally because we have a lot of students that don't want to necessarily stay on the property. They just want to come on and off property for the day. And because we were kind of creating a closed group for COVID, we haven't started that part of the program yet, but I think by this next spring, we'll be ready to invite those participants as well.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Well, and you know, to just jump forward, I'll have Steve welcome you to the business meeting, but let me just throw this out there. I apologize, we're a little over. Here's the continuing opportunities for SAF and for Society of Agronomy. If you could put your name and cert number in the chat box. And just so I want to just give a big thank you to Gus and Graham and Lindsay. Thank you so much, everyone. It was awesome. Steve, would you like to let folks know about the business meeting?
So hopefully folks can hear me. So we can keep this nice and short, seeing as we're a little bit over. So again, thank you, Gus, Graham, Lindsay. That was some really good work and some great follow-up discussion. So I appreciate you being here. So I guess first up, there's been some discussion on if we need to change the time of the quarterly business, the webinar / business meeting. So we would like to keep it to the second Tuesday of the months that we are doing that. But there has been a few people that have asked if we could maybe change time. So I don't know if maybe Bev or Andy, someone might be able to put that link in the chat box. My laptop is now dead, so I'm on my mobile device. But if not, we'll probably be sending out that survey out to the participants that can't be with us right now, for those that had to leave. So that is something that we wanted to get some opinions on, so we can figure out how we're moving forward to 2022.
Okay, all right, well, we can definitely help facilitate getting that out. I'm also going to go ahead and stop the recording so that when we post this, we'll go ahead and have it just the program. And then if people want to know what happened in the business meeting, we can just tell them. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right, let me go ahead and